Peymon who?
Mata Heyday.
Peymon Latte Heyday. Who is he?
Never paid taxes for 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
I haven't paid income tax in over 30 years, and you don't have to either.
Watching it as a layman, someone who doesn't know anything about taxes or the tax code other than that I hate the IRS and they send me letters all the time. Watching it as a layman, I thought, is that really true? So let's watch this famous clip from this famous conspiracy theory documentary from years ago, Zeitgeist, and unpack it on the other side.
The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It is about as federal as Federal Express. It makes its own policies and is under little regulation by the U.S. government. It is a private bank that loans all the currency at interest to the government, completely consistent with the central banking model that the country sought to escape from when it declared independence in the American Revolutionary War. Now, going back to 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was not the only bill pushed through Congress for the vested financial interests. They also pushed its partner, the federal income tax. First of all, the federal income tax is completely unconstitutional, as it is a direct, unapportioned tax, and the required number of states needed in order to ratify the amendment to allow the income tax was never legally met, and this has even been cited in modern court cases. Second, at the present day, roughly 25% of the average worker's income is taken from them via this tax. That means you work 3 months out of the year to fulfill this tax obligation. And where does that money go? Well, according to the Grace Commission report of the 1980s, 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt and by federal government contributions to transfer payments. In other words, all individual income tax revenues are gone before 1 nickel is spent on the services which taxpayers expect from their government. Today, the money Americans make working 3 months out of the year goes almost entirely to the interest fees charged for the debt-based fiat currency. The fact is, the federal income tax exists to feed the Federal Reserve federal government money machine, making sure the interest payments are always there. And third, even with the government claim as to the legality of the income tax, there is evidently no clear statute, no law in existence that requires you to pay this tax.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know. And I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
Based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
I haven't filed an income federal.
What do you make
return
of this clip, having watched this? Now, like I said, I don't know whether that's accurate or not. I was just so intrigued when I saw it the first time. Is it partially true? Is it all true? What's going on, man?
Well, it is partially true in that direct taxes by the federal government on the American people must be divided up among the states. The way it was done in the late 1700s and early 1800s was that the federal government would send a bill to each state, and the bigger states charged more from the citizens per citizen than the small states. New York could be 20 million, the other would be 1 million. The states would collect it, and then they would turn that money to the federal government minus a 10% commission for collecting the tax. But what the international banksters wanted to create a privately owned central bank called the Federal Reserve, they wanted to make sure that the money they're going to lend out of thin air by fraud to the federal government, that the interest for that money was going to be paid somehow to the banksters. And that's why they duped the American people into believing that the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution changed the Constitution, but it did not. It did not change the taxing powers of the federal government. There's a Supreme Court case called Stanton versus Balting Mining Company, which clearly said that the 16th Amendment did not give Congress any new taxing power whatsoever.
Wow.
So, if the Supreme Court has said clearly that the 16th Amendment did not give Congress any new taxing power, how did they write the law? As usual, they use deception and lies to get you to do what you would not normally do. The corona hoax jab is technically not a vaccine. It's mRNA gene therapy in the medical books with the FDA. But on the propaganda on TV, Biden calls it a vaccine. So the U.S. individual income tax, when they use that term on the 1040 form, you naturally think, oh, that's me. I'm the U.S. citizen of the 50 states. That's the tax return I have to fill out by law. But in actuality, the term United States in federal tax laws, like right here, this is the Bible of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Code. If you look at the definition here, it's actually the District of Columbia, not the 50 states.
Wow.
So that's how they suckered us to pay the tax we never really owed.
So it's almost as if I'm a small business owner, for example. It would be as if I just sent out an invoice to every business in the country and I didn't render any services in the hopes that people would just pay the invoice rather than dealing with investigating whether or not they actually owe me any money. So if I were to send out just invoices to everybody in the country for $500, some people would feasibly just write the check and send it back. Is that what you're saying that the IRS is basically doing? They're just sending out this form or claiming that they need you to fill out this form and you don't actually have to pay anything, but people just do it because they're deceived to believe they have to?
Basically, yes. And they've done it with the help of the corrupt major media.
Yeah.
You know, that pushed down the narrative about Corona hoax, about Trump-Russia conspiracy hoax, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, some Arab terrorists did 9/11. They've done it for a lot longer, since 1913. Way back then in 1913, the term United States estate and tax law only included the District of Columbia and its U.S. territories. Philippines, Alaska, Puerto Rico, possessions of the United States, but not the 50 states. But they didn't tell you what the definition was. They allowed it to be misled to believe that, oh, I'm a U.S. citizen of the 50 states. That's me. They're speaking about not be a good citizen, pay my fair share to my government.
So I've heard stories of people going to prison for tax evasion, and you obviously get threats from the IRS if you don't pay. You're going to have interest charges, and we're going to send it to debt collection and all those things. I'm familiar with the IRS as a citizen. But how is it that you've been able to avoid some of the repercussions that others have faced? So, despite whether it's legal or not for the government to imprison you for tax evasion or failure to pay tax, it seems to be happening to some people. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, obviously I've not broken any law because for over 30 years, I have not filed and paid any income tax openly and taught many Americans openly to do the same. And since 1994, I've been under criminal investigation by the IRS. And
Are you
so that
still,
tells you
as
something
we
about
speak, are you under investigation?
Oh, yeah, probably right now. They're watching me all the time for 30 years. So what? I'm not breaking any law. Neither has Trump, who's under prosecution right now in New York, right? However, here's the difference. Coming from Iran, a dictatorship country, we had no rights, no vote. Okay, yeah, you could be thrown in prison for simply criticizing a government.
Right.
With never a jury trial, tortured, executed. Coming to America, I was surprised why this country is not a free country anymore like it was supposed to be.
Mm.
And I found that too many leaders of the freedom movement were too egotistical and did not want to learn from other people. I was 29 years old. This was all black hair. And I kept myself humble. I looked for the best people out there in the freedom movement and learned from the best of the best. Being humble, that way I avoided the mistakes many of these people made. For example, they did not know, just like Donald Trump, neither Alex Jones knew how corrupt and criminal the U.S. Department of Injustice is. I knew it back then, but American people did not know that.
This is back
So
in the 80s.
I knew their tactics. I knew their games. So I was always like a good chess player, several steps ahead of them. So when they attacked me multiple times civilly, I beat them. I beat the Irish lawyers, Irish appeals officers in U.S. tax court and federal district court. I've even killed the criminal investigation of me in 2006 by suing them in a federal court. That's the difference.
Now, obviously, the IRS, regardless of its legality, is an intimidating organization for individuals such as myself and others. Just the average American citizen is intimidated by the IRS. I feel my heart stop or skip a beat when I see a letter from them in the mail. One of the jokes I like to tell my wife is, you know that you're an adult when you stop looking forward to the mail. So when you're a kid, you're so excited to get a letter. When you're an adult and you hate the mail, it's like that's when you know, right? And so how is it? Because the idea of fighting the IRS, even if I'm right, is overwhelmingly intimidating to me. And one of the things I noticed reading your bio before you came on, Peymon, was that you were able to beat these without hiring an attorney. I mean, was this expensive and time consuming for you? Or did you just have to show up to court like Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting and make a really sophisticated argument in front of a judge and walk out? But what has this process been like for you? How many hours have you actually spent in direct combat with the IRS, not just teaching students and educating people and speaking, but actually dealing with the IRS? How many hours has this consumed of your life?
Well, a lot, but I did all myself, and I'm glad I did because I learned.
Yeah.
You know, and what I do at Freedom Law School, which I created in 1996, is teach Americans, look, folks, number one, your rights you were born with, given by God. Two, the Constitution was written to protect your God-given rights from government abuse. Three, you must learn some basics of our system of laws and Constitution so that you can stand up and defend yourself against these crooks. And if you do that, you can win just like I did. And I wanted people to see that you can do that. America is so fantastic. Chase, look, in America, number one, we have free speech.
Yeah.
Free association, assemble, press, like this thing we're doing here. I could never criticize the king of Iran openly like this back there. I go to prison and be tortured. Number two, you have a right to appeal. You have a right to a trial. In America, you have a right to due process. Even the IRS, before they take your money, they have to give you the opportunity to have a trial. As a filer, you give that right up by put the rope around your neck and file that 1040 form under oath under penalty of perjury. As a non-filer, like 80 million Americans who no longer file a 1040 form, you don't give that right up. The IRS must make a case against you and give you a chance at the trial. And they have only 31 U.S. tax court judges. So if you understand these basic things, it's huge. There's way too many of us and very few of them. And if we, the American people, ever figure that out, there goes the deep state. There goes the criminals. We are overdue, Chase, for peaceful tax revolt, like the founding fathers did
Civil disobedience
at the time of the revolution. Not with force, peacefully, and not for taxes we owe, but taxes, Chase, that we legally never owed in the first place. And the proof of that is on our website for free for everybody to see for themselves at freedomlawschool.org.
So there's this clip that came across the desk today. This is clip number 19 for the crew. I want to play this and get your feedback. It's only a minute and a half long, but we've heard reports over the last couple of years and even in the last couple of weeks, of the IRS ramping up some of its tactics. So there were rumors at one point in time that there were going to be 80,000 additional IRS agents hired at one point. Yesterday, we saw Joe Biden propose a capital gains tax of 44%. And we're seeing reports now that the IRS is using AI to target the middle class. So I want to run clip number 19, and let's just unpack it together on the other side. Check this out.
What we have learned is that the IRS, in fact, has been using AI to access bank accounts of American citizens without any kind of a search warrant or even without any specific claim that they have committed a crime. So this was something that was discovered by an undercover journalist, and what they found is that the IRS has claimed that they have access to every single person's bank account. This person also indicated that they've been working with the Department of Justice and that they have absolutely no problem whatsoever going after the little guy to make sure that they are paying their taxes. This is such a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment that Jim Jordan and I sent a letter to the IRS demanding that they provide additional information about what they are doing with AI and what they are doing to protect the civil rights of American citizens.
So, Congresswoman, what's the end game here? Because at the end of the day, you can't put the AI genie back in the bottle, and it's so easy to use these technologies in the way that you're suspecting the IRS is. How do you protect American citizens and our constitutional rights?
Well, one of the things is we need a new administration in November, because this administration has been absolutely lawless in terms of its surveillance of us, of members of Congress, of local officials, of people who are protesters, of voters. This administration has completely ignored the Bill of Rights, whether it's the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. They have weaponized
Now,
the government against us.
of course, this all comes in the context of our leaders reauthorizing, renewing, and extending the ability for FISA to surveil American citizens without a warrant. Watching that 90-second clip, I know it was a curveball. What are your thoughts? What's your impulsive reaction to that?
Well, of course, IRS is a criminal agency, just like CIA, FBI, and DOJ. And of course, they can, in rare cases, do that. But you got to remember this. There's 150 million Americans that file. 80 million people don't no longer file 10-4 income tax, confession, trap forms. There's tens of millions of corporation tax returns filed, and there's only about 80,000 IRS employees, and vast numbers of them are simply clerks typing in information on a computer or taking your calls. IRS is not this monster that you should be afraid of, that the corrupt major media portrays them to be. They are literally the Wizard of Oz created by the corrupt major media. Again, ask yourself, IRS has come after me multiple times, and I've beaten them in their own courts and their own lawyers, because I've been telling Americans for over 30 years, do not feed the beast. You legally do not have no obligation to pay any federal income or payroll taxes. So they want to stop me, but they never indict me to take me for a jury like they've done to Trump, because they know I'll beat them. They know that when I beat them, it'd be a bigger victory for me and American people, so they'd rather leave me alone and hope that you and others don't give us publicity so American people do not hear our message.
They don't want to establish that precedence. Yeah. So what about Americans who are employees and they work for corporations that do pay payroll tax and do automatically withhold? What are they supposed to do about the money that the IRS has already stolen from them before they've even filed?
They should go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, and the instructions are there on how to legally and safely stop the stealing of income taxes from their paycheck up front. So now they don't have to, by April 15th, file a 10-4 income tax confession trap form like a slave and beg the IRS to please give me some of that money back. You stop the withholding right there. And for all business owners, independent contractors, stop sending IRS those quarterly estimated payments. Stop giving any forms to the IRS. If you're a business owner, stop withholding from paying your people. Do not 1099 anybody. That's all legally does not apply to people of the 50 states.
Well, let me ask you a tough question. Have you ever had a student who followed your teachings and methods that's been locked up?
Nobody.
Wow.
I've done this for over 22 years, helping people. All their anything comes up, criminal or civilly with the IRS. Not one person that came to me clean, stopped filing income tax with me, not others, and stayed with me, has ever gone to prison, nor had the IRS levied their bank account, paycheck, their home, or any of their assets.
So I'm somebody who's absolutely 100% willing to fight the IRS and take all the risks, but I'm not comfortable or willing to fight with my wife. So how do I convince my wife that I'm not a maniac putting our family at risk if I want to go this route of just stopping payments to the IRS?
Well, Chase, let me ask you.
Yeah.
How would you convince your wife that you don't want to take the jab, corona jab, because the media tells you to be safe, make sure you get the corona jab and all the boosters. How would you educate her not to get the jab? You have to educate her.
Yeah.
And the education is on our website for free at freedomlawschool.org. I have 7 steps on our website to help everybody free themselves of IRS deception, fear, robbery, and slavery. And step 1 for your wife, Chase, and everybody is to know that based on U.S. government's official legal websites, no law requires the people of the 50 states to file and pay income taxes. The only people that got to pay income tax are federal employees, people who travel to D.C., and citizens and residents of the District of Columbia. So it starts right there. People go to freedomlawschool.org for themselves. And listen, don't believe me. Nobody don't believe anything I say. Go to freedomlawschool.org. And everything I say is documented from the U.S. government's official legal websites and reports.
Thank you so much.
Peymon who?
Mata Heyday.
Peymon Latte Heyday. Who is he?
Never paid taxes for 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
I haven't paid income tax in over 30 years, and you don't have to either.